I'll tell you a little bit about the Science Gateways Community Institute. We're funded by the National Science Foundation to provide support to the Science Gateways community, and we do that in 3 different areas, main areas. One is supporting the building and running of gateways, and that includes consultants who can provide hands-on development support, as well as advice on various areas ranging from cybersecurity to usability to graphic design and sustainability. We also have a catalog of gateways and software, so if you're joining this and you have a project that is either a gateway that you would like to let people know about, or a software component that people could be using when building gateways, we encourage you to add your information to our website, and you can find that on our a link to the catalog on our website. The next area of support that we offer is through education and training. Most obviously this webinar series. We also have week-long boot camps that are intensive programs to help folks learn how to create and sustainably run their gateway, and a number of student-focused programs. And I'll put in an aside at the end of this event, of this webinar, I'll be putting up a link to our student programs on our website. We are currently through till April 26th, we'll be soliciting applications for people who'd like to have an intern work on their project, as well as for a coding institute that's for students. So we're looking for both student applicants and projects. Our annual conference is also underway. So the Gateways 2019 conference will be in late September, and our call for participation is on our also open and on our website. That is available through, you have to have abstracts in by April 29th, which is Monday, a Monday. And of course, our website has other kinds of resources and materials that you might be interested in. And then finally, we just look at this as being an opportunity for networking and community. We have a partner program that connects other kinds of organizations and communities with people in the Gateway community who might be interested in making use of that. We have an affiliates program, which is connected to the Gateway and software catalog that is for folks who have software projects that they're willing to support, essentially, if someone from the Gateways community comes to them and would like some extra help. And of course, we have all sorts of news and blogs and whatnot on our website. And I'd like to also point out that we have a fairly new community forum, which is a Google group you can join, and it's a great way to post questions and get input from other people who are doing the exact same thing as you are. It's archived online as well, and it doesn't have a ton of traffic, but it's definitely worth joining. And of course, our conference is a great way to meet new people too. So these are all interconnected, supported by we have 5 service areas that are behind these 3 main categories of support, and I encourage you to come visit our website and learn more about it. And then one last plea before we hand this off to our presenters today. We do depend on the National Science Foundation for our funding. We like to demonstrate to them that we're having some impact. So if you could take a few moments, I should say, it's really less than 30 seconds to just give us feedback about how effective this and useful this was for you. And there's also an open-ended question where you can suggest additional topics you'd like to hear about. In particular, I mean, I'm really excited to have this topic because I know that data is a really important component of many websites, and being able to educate our community about topics around data is something I know that's very valuable. So if there are other data topics, just let us know through this webinar feedback form. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it off to our speakers. We have today with us 3 folks from the DataONE project, and I'll let them tell you more about themselves to the extent that they want to, but we have Bob Sandusky and Amber Budden and Karl Benedict, and the 3 of them together are involved with the DataONE project, which provides all sorts of fantastic things that you need to know about. And I'll leave it at that. So take it away, folks.
All right. Welcome and thanks to everybody for attending our webinar, DataONE, Data Partner for Science Communities. I'd also like to thank Catherine for inviting us to present in the SGCI webinar series. So just to give you a little bit more information about our presenters today, Karl Benedict is from the University of New Mexico, where he's the Director of Research Data Services at the UNM Library, and he's also co-chair of the DataONE Users Group. Amber Budden is from DataONE. She's the Director for Community Engagement and Outreach and a co-PI. She's based at the National Center for Ecological Analysis and Synthesis at UC Santa Barbara. I'm Bob Sandusky. I'm an Associate Dean in the University Library at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And I'm also a co-chair of the DataONE Users Group. Karl.
Yes.
Today we're going to begin by presenting an overview of DataONE, tell you a little bit about its architecture and some of the impacts it's had as a project. Then Amber's going to take over and review some of the most recent and emerging products and services from DataONE. And then at the end, Karl will talk about the evolution of the DataONE community. And then at the very end, we'll take questions and have conversation. In total, we hope that this presentation should give you a clear sense of how DataONE is a partner with science communities. So DataONE began as a project with funding from NSF about 9.5 years ago. And the objectives set out for the project have really been achieved over these 9.5 years. Also, what's happened during the last 9.5 years is the entire research data landscape has been transformed. So we now have commercial research data services, including Google Data Search, and other commercial entities like Elsevier have been getting involved in supporting research data. There's also now hundreds of data librarians in our colleges and our research libraries. And thousands of scientists have been trained in best practices for managing research data. So from the outset, DataONE wanted to align with the goals of the NSF's DataNet program. And to that end, DataONE is focused on 4 primary stakeholder groups represented here. So the researchers and scientists who both preserve or create, collect, describe research data, and submit or beginning to submit it to repositories for reuse. Some scientists and researchers are reusers of data and have been for a long time. The data repositories themselves, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So DataONE is a federation of these repositories. Libraries, so libraries perform kind of glue functions between researchers and data reusers and do a lot of training in colleges and universities. And one of the areas they move into is research data. And libraries also have a role in stewarding and preserving research data for the long term. And then funders, of course, are important. So, DataONE has gotten a lot of funding from NSF through its primary grant, but it's also applied for and received supplemental grants with other various partners for other specific projects. And we've also had support from some of these other agencies as well. And so, over the last 9.5 years, in terms of funders, DataONE started in 2009, and in 2010, early 2011, NSF came out with its data management plan requirements for new proposals, and then many research funding agencies followed suit. And so now the U.S. government, governments in other parts of the world, and private foundations are required data management plans. So many of the principal people who were involved in developing the DataONE proposal have been working on data management issues for quite a long time, dating back to the late 1980s, and mostly those folks are working in ecological and environmental sciences. So they had a track record of being successful collaborators prior to the release of NSF's DataNet solicitation in 2007. And these people were also researchers trained in earth, environmental, and other scientific domains. So they sort of represented the researchers. The original group writing that proposal also had representatives from several data repositories, and that helped the proposal address the needs of those sets of stakeholders, and to help ensure that DataONE, when it launched as an operating system, had a good amount of data in its collection at the time of launch. The solicitation also recognized the value of archival and information and library science expertise, and required that folks from those domains be integrated into the proposal. So DataONE included investigators from the California Digital Library, the iSchool at the University of Tennessee, and a number of other subject matter experts from outside ecoinformatics, including some folks from publishing, from citizen science and computer science. So NSF made 2 5-year awards in that first round in 2009, including DataONE. And the cooperative agreement that was struck covered a range of activities and a bunch of specific deliverables, including creating production quality cyber infrastructure at scale to go production and actually serve the needs of the research community. So as part of that, just to give you a general sense of what was built, they built core infrastructure and core services that used APIs to communicate between what we call coordinating nodes, providing central services, centralized metadata index, providing support for authentication, integrating existing data repositories into the federation via those APIs. And those are the member repositories. Federated access and discovery of the data from all of those repositories. Data set preservation across the repositories by replicating copies of the data set throughout the federation. And also integration with researcher tools like R and MATLAB. And providing more recently the ability to see data repository and data set metrics to give folks a sense of how many times their data had been downloaded or cited. And you'll get a better sense of that later in the webinar. And finally, DataONE was conceived recognizing that there are a number of related social, cultural, and educational issues, and that transformation of the scientific culture toward a more data-focused orientation, where data preparation, data deposit, and data reuse were more natural activities for researchers. And to get to the point where data would be considered a first-class object in the research enterprise, and people could get credit for the data that they created and curated. Those were all folded into the project from the outset. So issues here included training domain scientists about research data, about metadata standards, and the tools to do that kind of work. We also did work supporting the emerging field of data librarianship and data curation by providing a lot of materials that you'll hear about later, and also supporting new standards, new and emerging standards, and tool development. And so we've worked with DataCite, with the developers of the DMP tool, developing data citation best practices, and these are just some of the most well-known examples of DataONE's involvement. So since its inception, DataONE has worked to build capabilities that support the full data lifecycle, from planning to collecting data, doing quality assurance, describing it, preserving it, discovering, supporting discovery and data integration and analysis. In some cases, DataONE has partnered with other organizations to create tools like the DMP tool for creating data management plans, which is now supported through the California Digital Library. In other cases, our Cyberinfrastructure team has built software such as writing extensions to R and MATLAB and contributing those to the community. And those kinds of tools provide direct access into the DataONE Federation for reading data or depositing data back into the Federation. This is a timeline that illustrates the kind of timing of the member repositories that have joined the DataONE Federation since 2012, when DataONE became fully operational. And over on the left-hand side of this slide, we had a number of repositories lined up early on. Those are some of our early partners. In 2014, at the bottom, we added Dryad, which supports a lot of journals that require data to be deposited along with the submission of manuscripts, and so forth through the years up until most recently. And so the most recent repositories that have joined include the Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies, and then 3 repositories have recently joined from the Interdisciplinary Earth Data Alliance, AIDA, the EarthChem Library, the Marine Geodigital Library, and the U.S. Antarctic Program Data Center. And then we have some other member repositories lined up in Cyverse and GBIF. So to quickly give you a sense of the infrastructure, DataONE is currently operating 3 coordinating nodes, and these are the software systems that provide central services, such as the centralized metadata index. They perform synchronization of data between those 3 coordinating nodes. They provide the ability to monitor the health of the entire federation. They provide some storage for replicas of data sets from all the different repositories in the system. And then the data repositories, DataONE supports a number of ways for data repositories to participate. We have quite a few repositories that use the Metacat system, which is produced by NCEAS in Santa Barbara. There's a Python stack that can be used and can be customized or integrated into a repository. So again, the data repositories communicate with the coordinating nodes and central services using a well-defined API that's been developed and tested over the last 7 or 8 years. And most recently, DataONE is supporting participation by repositories that can expose their data sets using schema.org. And the Carey Institute is an example of a repository participating that way. And then the last thing about repository participation is that a repository can participate at the most basic level, which is read-only, where the data is read into DataONE. There can be additional functions, additional API elements used to support authentication, and then all the way up to having repositories contribute storage space to hold replicas of data from other repositories in the network. So one of the key and basic elements of DataONE is the federated search. And so the way that works is that we have all these repositories, more than 40 repositories, and all their data centrally indexed into one system that supports discovery and search. And so if someone has a question around looking for data around carbon cycling, ocean nitrogen, or plant biomass, or the distribution of avian species, they can come to DataONE, and enter search terms, and they'll be searching across all of the data in all of the repositories. And so that makes it easier on the researcher to do some to look for data without having to go to individual repositories or know which repositories are most likely to have that kind of data. So it saves them time and effort in that way. And here's a screenshot of the DataONE search. And so what this shows you kind of in the middle there, those are the search results. And you can see that what's shown here comes from a number of repositories. The two at the top are from Dryad. The next two are from the Long-Term Ecological Research Network. Then the fifth one is from the Knowledge Network for Biocomplexity. So, the search results are presented intermingled that way. There's also a map-based search that people can zoom into if they're particularly interested in what data is available from a specific geographic region. And here are some of the options available for searching for data. So you can search for a data creator, and that's what the search was, someone named Peterson. But there's a number of other filters or facets to help you further refine your search. And so that includes the member node or the repository. If you know you want to just search the data from a specific repository, you can do that. You can limit by year, taxon, location, and so on. So it's quite powerful and adaptable to the needs of searchers. And now Amber will take over.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Bob. So in this section, I'm going to talk a little bit about the current status of DataONE and the products and services that we have, but also talk a little bit about kind of future directions with respect to products and services. So these are some metrics, some information on the data that is available through that federated search interface that Bob just highlighted. And so across the network, within the 42 data repositories that we have that are participating as partners with DataONE, we have nearly 1.2 million data files, and this is across 814,000 metadata files. And so in the top figure, you can see the growth in the holdings of repositories that are within DataONE, and this growth reflects a number of different things. It reflects member nodes or repositories joining DataONE, as you saw in the timeline that Bob presented. It also reflects additional data going into those repositories as the culture of data sharing is changing and has changed across the last 10 years. On the bottom left-hand side, you can see that we have pretty much global data coverage. And so this indicates the geo-coordinates of the data that are available through the system. And actually, as Bob showed on that search interface, you can click on individual tiles and you can do a geo-based search to kind of drill down into some of the details of the data available. Okay, Bob. Next slide, please. So in terms of some services that we currently offer, in addition to the federated search capabilities, we have tools or metrics associated with data. And so this has come out of a collaboration with a project called Make Data Count, which is a collaboration between DataCite, the California Digital Library, and DataONE. And what we have done is, through that collaboration and in partnership with Counter, we have developed a Counter code of practice for the ways in which we count data objects or usage of data objects. And so with that standardized methodology, we have developed an event data hub that enables us to aggregate information and present accurate and informative usage metrics. And so within DataONE, we expose information on downloads associated with each data package. We present views and also citations. And so this is available through our search interface. If you were to go and take a look at individual record, they will have this bar with this information, and you can click on each of those buttons to pop up more comprehensive information. And so in this example, we're showing graphically views and downloads, and that's scalable. You can interact with those visualizations. And then also we have citations, and we present the full citation information of the article that is citing those data with the opportunity to link out directly to that article. Next slide. We also have in implementation a metadata quality improvement or a metadata quality check. And so this is something that is a way to evaluate the comprehensiveness of the metadata against a set suite or schema. And so we are working on a DataONE wide suite. This is an implementation of a couple of the member nodes within DataONE, one of which is the Arctic Data Center. And essentially, the individual repository can define the components of the suite, so they can determine what it is that is important to be checked within the metadata. So I believe this example comes from the Arctic Data Center. And so they have included some checks. For example, they have decided that an informative title needs to have a certain number of words, a comprehensive abstract needs to have a certain number of words. You need to include the grant number for the NSF award that is associated with the data that is in here. We need to have contact information for the submitter, ideally an ORCID for the individual, etc. And so the quality report runs these checks against the metadata, and it provides an output that gives an indication of how complete the metadata is. And this is useful in the process of creating a metadata record if you're not familiar with writing data description. This helps you see how complete the metadata record is. And it also provides information to us and to funders or institutions or anyone else that is interested in looking at the comprehensiveness or the quality of the metadata associated with the records in their repository. Next. Another service or functionality that we have is the ability to explore provenance and to document provenance for the purposes of reproducibility in research. And this is a screenshot of a metadata record within the DataONE system. So again, if you were going to go into search, you found a record, you can scroll down, you can see these kinds of details for those records where the data submitters have provided this provenance information. Now I'm going to talk you through what this is representing kind of from left to right. But first, in the center, what we are looking at is a CSV file. So we're looking at a data file. I can't see the initial title, but aromatic alkynes, PWS, CSV. There's some more text there, but this is the data file that you're looking at. And what it's showing you on the left-hand side is that there were 4 sources for this data file. So you can imagine that the researcher has downloaded 4 different data sets, 4 sources of data. They've done some sort of analysis or integration, and then that derived data set is what is at the center of this visualization. And so you have the 4 sources, center, and then on the right-hand side, you have the derivations or the output from analysis on that particular data set. And so on the right-hand side, you can see there's an arrow which has kind of a code hash. That's indicating that there's also some script associated with that. For each of these elements, you can click on them to find out more information. So in the case of the source, the orange source at the bottom left, by clicking on that, you have this pop-up box telling you that that source is called alkane CSV, and you can view that file, and it provides you with some summary information about that file. And so that's true for all of the icons within this provenance trace or this workflow. You can click on each individual piece for information and to be able to access that content. So in this case, we have the 4 sources. What's hidden by the pop-up is a script that was used to generate that derived file that's in the center. We have another script which was used to generate the 2 graphical derivations. And so by being able to document and to expose this provenance, it enables researchers that are working with the data to really understand the full workflow and to be able to reproduce that research or to be able to build upon much more efficiently the work that has been done already. Next slide, please. So that provides some information about various components of kind of technical infrastructure and services. We also have a very comprehensive education and outreach program, and this is just highlighting some of the things that we engage in. We have a lot of documentation and best practices available online for working with data and for understanding approaches to working with data. We engage in in-person training activities. We do these both at disciplinary meetings, and so we do workshops at society meetings, but we also collaborate and run standalone training activities that vary in duration. A number of the collaborators on those have included NCs, ESIP, the Arctic Data Center, and the meetings that we most typically run workshops at are the AGU and ESA, but we've also done training events at other workshops when invited and when partnering with others. We have what unfortunately looks like a very poor resolution skill building hub in the center there. This is a page where all of our training material has been transitioned across to GitHub to build community around our materials. We recognize that the landscape is changing and we want to keep our materials current and relevant. And so by putting them to GitHub, we're building a community around contributing to those resources to maintain their value. Our education resources are all documented as part of the Data Management Training Clearinghouse, which is an initiative that's being led at ESIP, which is essentially a catalog of training resources that exist in this space. We run a summer internship program, and we also have a webinar series that runs September through May during the kind of academic year. And these webinars are focused around different stages of the data lifecycle. Again, they're community webinars. We bring in members of the community to talk about relevant and pressing topics, but we make sure that we're covering all of those stages of the data lifecycle that Bob presented earlier on. So as Bob mentioned, DataONE has been funded by 2 NSF awards, 2 5-year awards as part of the DataNet program at NSF. But we also have a diverse model of funding and support from other partners and institutions. And so in terms of moving forward in sustainability, we are looking at a diverse portfolio that includes continuing our grant funding, but also sponsorship, partnership, and looking at monetization of services. And so for this next section, I'm going to focus on some of the services and the extensions to the services that we have, talk about how they might move us forward and contribute towards our path to sustainability. So the first one is something that we are talking about with respect to kind of portal services. And we talk here about repository portal services, but really this is a portal or a look, a snapshot into the DataONE holdings and services that isn't just for repositories. Repositories are a logical target community, but it could be at the level of a group, a research group that are working on a project, either distributed or localized within an institution, like a lab or a department. And so the vision here, and what we have implemented for a couple of groups, is that we provide this domain or group-specific portal to the data that's within DataONE. And so that will mean that they have enhanced search filters, customized search filters that pertain to that particular community and the types of questions that community are asking. It enables them to have a branded space and a repository description. We provide aggregated citation and usage statistics. So if you recall, those metrics that we have developed in collaboration with Make Data Count are currently at the level of the individual record, and being able to group these together according to an institutional department or an institutional repository to be able to provide that usage metrics at a larger scale, an aggregated scale. And also, as I mentioned with the quality reports, again, it's currently at the individual data record level, and that would be, again, an opportunity to aggregate and to expose to a group, a repository, the comprehensiveness of the metadata associated with their holdings. Next slide. And so this is kind of a schematic showing how that would work. On the left-hand side, we have all of these different types of data that are held by all of the various repositories that are part of DataONE. Previously, Bob had showed you this with respect to conducting a search, whether it's avian distribution or some other component, and you're pulling the data out. In this case, the data is being exposed through specific portals that might pertain to, on the top we have the idea of a research expedition, the bottom a domain focus or permafrost. And so then when people are going to the portal, they're not searching the catalog with the search interface that we provided, but they're searching through a customized, semantically enhanced portal that enables them to draw down the details that are relevant to them. Next slide. And so what that means is that, as I mentioned, they can have that custom branding, they have the data level metrics, and we're looking at providing metadata creation tools. And so we currently have metadata authoring tools at a couple of the repositories that can be scaled across the network to enable people to go through the portal and enter their data and author their metadata specific to that particular community. We have the metadata quality and the customized search. And as I mentioned, these portals can be organized based on project or organization repository. They can also be thematic. They can be geographically oriented. And so there's a lot of ways in which the portal services can be applied. Next slide. Another service that we are exposing is repository preservation services. And so what this means is that for repositories and libraries being the target community, we are exploring offering DOI minting services, but also data replication to DataONE and replication auditing services. And so that is something that we have built into our system right now. Within DataONE, as Bob mentioned, we have a network of repositories, but we also have coordinating nodes that maintain the metadata catalog across all of those repositories. And these coordinating nodes will they coordinate replication across the network. And so a repository can choose to participate in replication within DataONE, either have their data replicated to another repository, or they can be a site for replication and receive data from another repository. An example of this happening right now is the relationship between the Arctic Data Center and the National Centers for Environmental Information at NOAA. And so NCEI is acting as a replication host to data from the Arctic Data Center, and that coordination and the auditing is being run through DataONE. As I mentioned, we also have an extensive training program, and one of the things that we are recognizing that there is a need for within the community is data science training. So this includes fundamentals of data management, collaborative data science, and then also understanding how researchers can document provenance and to create reproducible workflows. And so right now, it seems that there's a need within the graduate student community, but there is also a need within the professional workforce for some of this data science training. And so the idea is to develop out 1 week data intensive trainings and offer them to a broader community. Right now, these trainings that we've run in collaboration with repositories that are part of the network are done through grant funds, either to the repositories or other sources. And so the target audience is individuals that are affiliated with that particular grant topic. And so they tend to be domain focused. And what we want to do is to be able to open this up to the broader community, including federal agencies, data managers at federal agencies, at repositories, at libraries who want to have the opportunity to engage in an intensive 1 week training in data science. And so this would be a fee-for-service training that we are looking to offer in the future. And so with that, I'm going to pass over to Karl, who's going to talk more extensively about engaging the broader community in future activities. As Bob mentioned, both Bob and Karl are co-chairs of the DataONE users group, the DataONE community group.
There we go. Now I can speak. Thank you. So yes, we've seen examples already in the development of some of the services that have and the large-scale collaborative efforts of the project in working with the community of member nodes, partnering with key community organizations and groups in collaboratively developing new products and services. And one of the core activities of DataONE from really the outset has been engaging with the community through the DataONE users group. And we can see here the continued growth over the entire course of the project of individuals and organizations engaging with DataONE, its products and services, joining the community, linking their repositories and their content to the DataONE network in order to achieve the significant network benefits of participating in the broader network. As the project is transitioning from what has been a significantly funded activity by the National Science Foundation into an ongoing program, we're necessarily giving significant thought to and developing strategies around transitioning DataONE from a project with a set of clearly defined objectives and processes and goals that had input from the community in their development and execution, but were also largely bounded by the cooperative agreement and the things that DataONE as a project had said it was going to be doing in the respective proposals for the 2 5-year awards. Next slide. So this is just a visualization of essentially the current state of the DataONE project as we envision all of these products and services that we've been talking about so far having a high degree of coordination and management by DataONE as a project, by the DataONE leadership team and the larger group of project collaborators. So here on the left side of the diagram, we have all of our educational and training materials at the top. We have the various applications and interfaces that have been developed in the middle of that circle. And then we have the infrastructure itself, whether it's the coordinating nodes or also the overlapping replication nodes for providing some core preservation capabilities for the network. Working very closely with the DataONE project has been the growing collection of member nodes that are connecting to the DataONE network through the coordinating nodes and benefiting from the federated search that DataONE provides to allow for an increased discovery surface and visibility of the contents of those repositories, increasing the impact of the data that those repositories are working with their respective communities to bring into the network for increased reuse and impact. And then just on the right-hand side, we see the various sort of relationships between the DataONE project and the external user community in the top small diagram in terms of external users accessing the contents of all of the member nodes that are a part of the network through the unified DataONE interface. We have the coordination role that DataONE plays between the member nodes, allowing for replication of content between those member nodes, but also providing other aspects of coordination to those member nodes. And then, of course, we have the interactions between DataONE and the learning communities that are that have access to the training and learning materials that have been produced. Next slide. The key issue, though, is how do we essentially break down that barrier in some respects between what DataONE as a project has been doing and provide an opportunity, develop a structure for being able to much more effectively capture community needs, bring those community needs and desires and capabilities into a much more interactive and community-driven approach. So here we see essentially a decomposition of the various components that had been both within and outside of the DataONE project as we start to re-envision how a newly structured organization can look like in terms of very high level and ongoing engagement with the community looks like. And if we go to the next slide, And actually, I should mention I was looking at the wrong thing. So, the things that we need to be thinking about include the various components of infrastructure in which the various repositories and data producers are major players. And of course, the funders, publishers, and computing service providers are also major stakeholders in the infrastructure. And next slide. And we have another set of products and capabilities that have been developed that I've put into this larger category of training and tools, where the stakeholders are, in some cases, overlapping, but also bring in some new groups in terms of the researchers, the libraries, the software developers, the institutions where these activities are taking place, and then again, the funders and the publishers that also have a vested interest in these capabilities as well. So we need to think about how we can engage with this very diverse set of stakeholders in envisioning the DataONE program going forward and the community engagement and interaction model that we're going to be heading towards. And with that, I think we actually can go to the next slide now. And ultimately, what we're envisioning is what you might think of as a smaller DataONE core that has a significant focus on the maintenance of the infrastructure, still provides a high level of coordination through the ongoing development of the software stack and the application programming interface. But the level of control that is exerted by DataONE as the core is diminished relative to the input and guidance and collaborative roles that the community brings to continuing to maintain and manage the larger network of which DataONE is a participant and is providing some support infrastructure. So as we move forward, we need to be thinking about, and we are thinking about, what the community roles and structures are for making sure that we're effectively capturing the community's needs and being able to leverage the community activities and investments in meeting the needs of the broader community of users and that diverse community that I was highlighting in the previous slide. So we're looking at models in which there may be a membership organization where we're able to effectively communicate and capture feedback from the community. An advisory board model is also potentially something we're looking at. So there's regular and more detailed interaction between representatives of the many stakeholders in the community and DataONE. Certainly looking at community managed development projects. So this is where being able to take some of the capabilities that have been developed as a part of the DataONE project and converging those out into the community as more community-driven, community-sustained open source projects where the direction of the ongoing development of those software capabilities are much more community-driven and controlled and contributed to. Certainly the development of collaborative proposals. We already have a small but growing portfolio of collaborative proposals between DataONE and other organizations in the community, and we certainly anticipate that that's going to move forward, in addition to a direct work and responses to funding agencies to continue to fund aspects of the cyber infrastructure. Overall, we are going to be highly dependent upon working with the community to assess the needs of the community in terms of cyber infrastructure, training, and other capacity building. We're going to need guidance from the community in terms of prioritizing what are the most important capabilities that need to be developed and how we need to sequence those activities. And then, of course, we need to draw on the expertise and skills and effort of the community to actually execute this plan. And next slide. A golden opportunity for doing that is at our upcoming community meeting this summer in Tacoma, Washington. That's taking place in conjunction with the Summer Earth Science Information Partners meeting. So the DataONE community meeting will be on Monday, July 15th. And there's the link there for registration for the meeting. It's free. And this is really an opportunity where we're going to be bringing to the community and engaging in a substantive discussion around what sort of governance model we would like to try to adopt to provide guidance and a future vision for how this network is going to evolve. What are the values and principles under which we're going to operate? And then we will also have information sharing from participating repositories. We will have more information and demonstrations of the services and capabilities that we've been talking about. So it's a great opportunity to both participate in the process of defining and shaping what the community, this community model for DataONE is going to look like moving forward, but to also learn more about DataONE through more direct interaction with the community and the DataONE leadership. With that, I think our next slide just has our contact information, and we can then, following that, start our conversation and questions and answers.
Terrific, thanks so much. And these slides will be posted on our website along with the video, so that contact information will be available that way for sure. So we do have some questions that came in, and I'll give you our first one. Let you talk about it. We do have a bunch, so so keep your answers to a minute or so, because there's a bunch of different interesting questions here. So the first one comes from Mona, who said, I'm wondering if the project uses taxonomies for various types of data to maintain relationships. If yes, do data contributors have to annotate their data using the taxonomy?
So I am not a technical individual, but we do have the Director of Development for DataONE on the line as part of this webinar, and so I'm going to encourage Dave to turn on his mic. The data submitters are submitting to the individual repositories, and so they conform to the metadata standards and taxonomies that are required for that specific repository. And then in terms of the integration that's done by the coordinating nodes, Dave can talk a little bit more about how we handle interoperability across those different taxonomies.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Yeah, we do use taxonomies, but at a fairly low level in that. So one example of a taxonomy in maintaining relations is use of the Open Archives Initiative Object Reuse and Embedding standard, which helps identify relationships between components within a data set, for example, so indicating that metadata describes the data within a package. Then there's other taxonomies which are employed by the different metadata standards, such as ISO 19115 and EML, and so forth. And so, in general, yes, and the checks are really done, as Amber mentioned, by the contributors as they add content to the member nodes.
Great. Mona, hope that answered your question. And then another question came in from Chunhan saying, it seems to me DataONE does not have its own data registration entry form because DataONE federates various data repositories. I think it's somewhat rhetorical, but yeah.
Yes,
correct?
That is correct. One of the things, I mentioned briefly in terms of products and services moving forward is we have discussed a pass-through mechanism where we have that registration, the metadata entry form, and the data, it doesn't go to DataONE, it goes to the appropriate repository. But we've talked about having that pass-through to be able to kind of consolidate all of the services that an individual will need.
Great. So that's a future wish then. Okay. Yeah. All right. Then a question from Karl, who says, does DataONE have data APIs that third-party apps, for example, things running on other gateway platforms could use to connect to its data holdings? And how would someone get started on using such APIs if they exist already?
Dave?
That's a pretty technical question.
So yes, DataONE is completely accessible through several APIs, which are exposed by the member nodes to provide consistency across the repositories, so investigators can interact. If you have a tool that works with one member node, for example, then it works with all the member nodes. And we also have APIs exposed from the coordinating nodes, so you can interact with the coordinating nodes programmatically. These are all documented, if you go to the DataONE.org homepage and navigate there, you'll be able to find the API documentation. We have client libraries available in several languages, including Python, Java, R, and MATLAB. And these are all available through the DataONE GitHub repository. It's all open source.
Terrific, thanks. All right, so we have a couple questions. Okay, here's another one from Mona, and then we have one from Nancy who I think wants to ask it out loud. So first we'll just go with Mona's question, and maybe this is too big of a question, but she says, I'm curious to hear a medium to large challenge that you've faced and how you've overcome it. And Nancy is going to have a question about whether you've worked with any gateway-like projects. But she thought that might be something she'd have to explain. So I suppose you could choose your question that you want to answer.
Well, with respect to the challenge, I was actually wondering whether we were talking about a technical challenge or a social challenge. And so I was going to direct it either to Karl or Dave accordingly. But if we're going to talk about gateway projects, actually either of those would be appropriate to answer those questions.
Oh, okay. So why don't you make it a combo? So has there been a challenge you faced with a gateway type project that you could explain maybe?
Dave? Karl, who wants to?
Well, and actually one that I might highlight is the emerging challenge, and this comes back to the work that DataONE has been doing with the Earth Science Information Partners in identifying the growing and significant need for being able to locate and hopefully reuse data management training materials. So DataONE, in its work with ESIP, that has been engaged with the gateway community in a number of activities over the last year and a half or so. The clearinghouse development is a specific outcome of one of those engagements, and DataONE's partnership with ESIP in helping to develop the first instance of that data management training clearinghouse, I think, has been a significant outcome in meeting an identified challenge. And we've now been able to leverage additional investments from IMLS to continue the work on that clearinghouse, building on that initial success in the collaboration between DataONE, ESIP, and in that case, it was also USGS as another partner in that project.
Great. That brings us to the top of the hour, so maybe we should just stop here. I think that more or less takes care of all of our questions in just the right amount of time. So I want to I'll point out that there is an upcoming webinar next month, as well as opportunities, the link for the student opportunities. So with that, I want to make sure to again thank Bob and Amber and Karl for sharing this information about DataONE with us, because I think this will be helpful for a lot of folks, especially given the way that it can be connected to gateways. This is a terrific resource.